Hey everyone, welcome back to another Motivation Monday podcast for Monday, December 18th, 2017, our second to last Motivation Monday in the year of 2017. So, coming down to the end of the year, something I've been thinking about is how far I've come this year and some of the things to feel really good about, and some of the things that I definitely need to work more on this coming year. It's something that I always try to do at the end of the year is really reflect on a lot of the events that have taken place, both musically and non-musically. But obviously, on this show, we talk about musical things. So it's a time where I try to sit down and gather my thoughts about what worked well, what didn't work so well, and start getting my goals together for the new year. So one thing that I think about often, and I think happens to a lot of jazz musicians, is that we get overwhelmed very easily. When we listen to our favorite jazz musicians, and I would venture to say that most of us got into playing jazz from listening to jazz. And if I'm wrong about that, then so be it. But I know that's how it was for me, is I was extremely inspired by hearing the master musicians recordings, watching videos, stuff like that. And that really inspires me every day to be a better musician. But it can also be very overwhelming when you're listening to somebody like John Coltrane or Miles Davis or Clifford Brown or Charlie Parker. You know, the names go on and on and on forever and ever. But it's very easy to get overwhelmed because you start thinking to yourself, how am I ever going to sound that good? And that's a real issue because that can kind of stop you in your tracks. You can kind of tell yourself, well, I'm never going to sound that good, so why even try? You know, I've had that feeling many times after practicing for 6 hours in a day. You get done and you go, well, that 6 hours didn't make me sound like Charlie Parker, so why am I even going to pick the horn up and spend all that time again tomorrow? And I think that's something that maybe afflicts a lot of us. And I could be wrong, but I've talked to enough other musicians where we have discussions like that I think it's true over a large population of aspiring jazz musicians, such as myself and all of you out there. So one thing that's really, really important is to have a magnified focus when you're practicing from day to day. Don't worry about getting good at absolutely everything that goes into playing jazz because that will make your brain explode and turn to mush, and you will not want to touch your instrument ever again because this is a never ending process, right? There's always something to get better at, and that could be depressing at times, but it's also awesome that you could spend your whole life and still have stuff to practice at the end. So try to magnify your focus. Try to get better at one specific thing when you pick up your instrument. Don't think about trying to get better at everything, or your practice will turn into an unfocused mess where you're just jumping from thing to thing and not really getting good at any of those. So, for example, I have been working on Cherokee in every single key for about the past 2 months. And what I do is I do a different key every week. So I'm about through 8 keys and I'm practicing a whole bunch of stuff over that tune, trying to get some vocabulary together, trying to really learn that chord progression inside and out. But this comes at the expense of some other stuff. Like I talk a lot about bebop on the podcast, but I don't want to be strictly a bebop musician. I'm just using bebop to give me a base of skills that I can take into a more modern form of this music, right? Um, so I'm studying a bebop tune at the expense of studying a lot of other stuff that I could be looking at. But the difference is that I feel my time is best spent studying this bebop language because I fully believe that it will transfer over to a lot of the other modern stuff that I ultimately want to be playing. A lot of the tunes that I'm writing, a lot of the more modern musicians that I really, really love and listen to all the time, it's very, very clear that they have studied bebop to death. So that's why I'm doing that. So I fully realize that I'm spending a huge chunk of my time on an art form that I ultimately don't want to play every day. But I think that I have foresight enough to realize that this is actually going to help me play the stuff that I ultimately want to. So you see, if I start looking at this in a meta view, I'm gonna get depressed because I'm not working on playing over these ultra modern chord progressions currently right now. I'm working on a tune that's 50 something years old, right? So it's just a thing you have to do. You've got to narrow your focus down to like a pinhead, and really understand that the day to day is not going to be that meta practicing. It's going to be a more focused style of practicing. And you have to kind of forget about, well, how the heck do I sound like Ambrose on the trumpet ultimately? Well, at the end of the day, it's going to be a culmination of all these small things that you were working on that are going to come together into a larger whole of how you play. Right? So I think that that's something that can affect a lot of people, and I just wanted to say a few words about it, something that I've been thinking about here. So let me know if that's something that you've been thinking about. What are some of the things that you're thinking about at the end of the year here? Do you have some musical New Year's resolutions? Do you have things that you're wrestling with that you don't know if you're doing the right thing or not? Really common thing to happen, especially at the end of the year when all this talk of reflection and goals for the year to come starts to circulate around our heads when it comes to this stuff. All right. Okay, we'll see you for the rest of the week. We'll see you on Friday. And also, we're going to be releasing a brand new interview on Wednesday. So be on the lookout for that. I'm going to release my interview with the great saxophonist and educator Steve Neff. So be on the lookout for that. And we'll see you on Friday with another regular episode of the podcast. All right, everybody, have a great week. Stay inspired, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.